Hello and welcome to Fast Forward Newsline. I'm Dave Kattenberg. May 12th is International Awareness Day for Environmental Illnesses, of which multiple chemical sensitivities is one. With me today to talk about this topic is Michael Welch. Michael Welch is the news director at CKUW, University of Winnipeg Radio, where these video production sessions take place. Hello, Michael. Thank you for joining me today.
Well, good to be here, Dave. Thanks.
Michael, this is a topic that interests you, and you yourself know of individuals, have friends with multiple chemical sensitivities. Can you explain to me what is a multiple chemical sensitivity?
Well, what we're talking about in this instance is people who basically have reactions once they're exposed to chemicals or any kind of anything that could set off a certain reaction in multiple organs of the body. And so what you have in this instance is individuals who are confronted by much lower doses than the rest of the population. I thought of this topic after you did that excellent interview with Sarah Aronson on the toxic soup. We are all very much exposed to these chemicals, but some individuals have such severe sensitivities that it can cause them a tremendous anxiety, headaches, watering eyes, inflammation,
asthma, inability to breathe.
Yes, all of the above as well.
And we're thinking about things like fragrances, for example. For some years now, it's become common for people in public places to be asked not to be carrying fragrances with them in doctors' offices and other public spots. Mm-hmm. But one can imagine other situations, like, for example, folks who have to leave Winnipeg because of malathion fogging in the summer to counter the mosquitoes. Tell me about some of the things that trigger these responses, including these things I've mentioned.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, locally, the issue of malathion fogging for mosquitoes, not to mention other pesticides in the community, is a serious concern. But of course, it's not just stuff that's in the air. It can also be things that are in the food that you eat or what you ingest, that they can have these triggering effects. And it's estimated that 3 to 9% of the general population have that, are potentially vulnerable to this kind of ailment, which is quite a lot. But of course, in varying degrees. In some cases, it's extremely debilitating. In others, not quite so much. But in the most extreme cases, it can leave people housebound and even bound to their beds.
It's hard to imagine a situation more challenging in a person's life to be faced with multiple chemical sensitivities. The fear that one has, not being sure, stepping out in the course of the day, whether or not you're going to be exposed to something. It's terrible.
Yeah, we're talking about you have to develop a lifestyle that eventually it takes up a major focus of your life, to the extent that like I say, it's quite debilitating. I mean, it could be very socially isolating, where you're not able to take part in some of the same sorts of activities as friends and family might take for granted. You really have to. I mean, I have a close personal friend who's affected by this, who has to think twice about coming into this very university, even though one would not think of it as being a tremendously toxic environment. But things like in cleaners that might be used by the janitorial staff, it can really trigger a reaction, and so you have to be concerned about that. It's also isolating from the standpoint that there's not a widely recognized acknowledgement of this ailment as being real. There's a tendency to question whether the individual is in fact, if this is something real or if it's just some sort of an anxiety. Since we don't have a clear causation established. I mean, it's
What is known scientifically, medically about multiple chemical sensitivities?
well. First of all, it's they talk about it as being this is something that is triggered by chemicals, as opposed to cause. We don't have a clear causal relationship, but it's clear that there is a trigger, that these chemicals do trigger these symptoms, and it includes a variety of like I said, a variety of different symptoms. As I mentioned, it's like 3 to 9% of the population. It primarily affects women for some reason. And of course, symptoms, they could include oxidative and nitrosative stress, inflammation, and neurological and immunological dysfunctions. And of course, if the longer you're exposed to these chemicals, the more intense are the effects over time.
How are municipalities across Canada responding to this? What sorts of measures do we find institutions and cities taking to address this health issue?
Well, that's the sad part, is that there doesn't seem to be very much in the way, at least that I've been able to come across, of municipalities that are addressing this. I know that there's in Nova Scotia and Halifax, they have a much more advanced treatment protocol for dealing with these effects. They have a kind of integrative, holistic approach dealing with the whole person.
The Halifax Health Authority.
Yes, and it's so that this is, in fact, that this friend that I know has had to deal with doctors there to get more recognition of what she's been going through, and so you'll basically the treatments, apart from trying to do as much as possible to keep people from being exposed to these chemicals, they'll do a variety of take a number of efforts to deal sort of like deal with the stress and some of the other symptoms that accompany it, to sort of prevent a kind of a cascade of effects.
So May 12th is International Awareness Day for Environmental Health. What happens on this day? What's it all about?
Well, like I say, it's an awareness day, and you have groups of people who will use social media or do what they can to get the message out that this is something that's real.
And who sponsors the day? Who initiated that? Who's behind it?
Oh, well, I mean, it's for the most part, I mean, it's just organizations of individuals who are, I think they have a website. It's called May12.org, which is a way that people can connect through social media, and basically do what they can to raise awareness about not only the reality of this, but some efforts that are taking place internationally. For example, I'm holding in my hand a copy of the Rome Resolution, and this is released in January of 2015, not that long ago, in which 15 specialists were able to assemble a number of criteria and suggestions as to how you could, the ways, sort of a series of protocols that will help to address the concerns that are affecting a significant portion of the population. I mean, they include things like acknowledging that we need to have healthcare providers and social services help these patients to obtain timely rehabilitation. Housing is a very significant and important concern, because, I mean, here, coming back to Winnipeg.
Houses are just filled with all sorts of chemical compounds that are potentially harmful to our health, particularly new houses. Mm-hmm. And things we bring into houses: rugs, bedding, clothing, furniture.
Well, yeah, I mean, just think about, new car smell. I mean, transportation and housing. Denied those things. I mean, it's bad enough just for the regular part of the population that don't have these concerns. But if you don't have housing, if you can't get adequate housing, or you're relegated to living in a toxic environment, you're really going to be adversely impacted in all areas of your life. So it's there's really, like the Rome Resolution speaks to the urgency of being able to get proper adjustments in all areas of life, and in addition to the treatments and just the acknowledgement that this is a serious concern for a segment of the population. I want to add just one more point, is that there is a municipality, it's called Tarragona, it's just south of Barcelona in Spain, in Catalonia, Spain, where they've already started to put in place these sorts of protocols that are dealing in a very straightforward way with people suffering from this ailment.
Michael Welch, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
You've been watching Fast Forward Newsline at the Green Planet Monitor. We come your way each week at the same time in this little box. Fast Forward is generously supported by the Government of Canada, the Social Justice Fund of Unifor, and the Community Radio Fund of Canada. Community Radio Fund of Canada. My name is Dave Kattenberg. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye for now.